Hi, if you're like a lot of Google Sheets users, chances are you are working in a spreadsheet that has already been created for you and the formulas have already been written. And I find that while people are in a spreadsheet, maybe even daily, lots of times they don't really know what those formulas are that are in the spreadsheet, and they're kind of leery of learning because, well, that spreadsheet looks really complicated. It's big, so the formula must also be complicated, right? Well, while they can be, formulas can be just as simple as elementary math: add, subtract, multiply, and divide. So today we're going to try to remove some of the mystery from formula writing so that if you're called upon, you can write your own formulas or edit ones that already exist. And we are going to start at the very beginning of writing formulas. Hi, I'm Terry, one of the Consumer Technology Specialists for Mid-Continent Public Library, and let's get started by learning some of those rules that will help you gain confidence in writing basic formulas. The first and most important thing that you need to remember about writing formulas in sheets is that all formulas must begin with an equal sign. If you forget, and certainly most people will at some point, but if you forget to start with that equal sign, what happens is Sheets will interpret whatever you've typed as text. Now it will show in the cell, it will show to the left side of the cell because that's where text resides. If you start your formula with an equal sign, you'll see the answer to that formula in the cell, and the formula will actually appear in the formula bar. So don't forget to start with an equal sign. The next part of the 4 simple rules here for writing formulas is that you want to use math operators. Simply add, subtract, multiply, and divide. Now, while most people are familiar with add and subtract signs, they may not be as familiar with multiply and divide, so let's look at those. First of all, multiply is an asterisk, and divide is the forward slash. Now, for some people, that's a little confusing because when they look at their keyboard, they can see that there is also a backslash. Now, the backslash just doesn't work. So one way that may help you remember about division is that fractions also mean divide. So if you think of a fraction, say 1/2, and you're someone who writes that fraction with a slanted line, well, it's the same slanted line as what you use for division here. So that is one way to help you remember. So let's look at where you can find those math operators on your keyboard. As you look at your keyboard, you'll notice that in the upper right you have the backspace key, and the backspace key is to the right of the row of numbers that you have on your keyboard. Now, to the left of backspace, the very first key is an equal sign, and then above the equal sign is a plus sign. To get the plus sign, you simply hold down your shift key as you press down the equals key. So to get a plus sign, again, shift and equals. To the left of that, you have the minus sign, and you don't need to even use the shift key with that. You simply just depress that key and it becomes part of your formula. As we go to the left, we'll eventually see the number 8 at the bottom, and then at the top of that key, we have the asterisk for multiply. So to multiply, you're going to hold down the shift key as you press the 8, and that gives you the asterisk for multiply. Now that is 3 of the 4 operators, but the 4th one is in a slightly different place. As I go down to the lower right, and it's below the backspace key, but just to the lower right, you'll eventually find the right shift key. To the left of that is your forward slash key. and it again doesn't require a shift key to get that particular symbol, so simply press your / key to divide. Now we could also look at the 10 keypad, or some people call it the numeric keypad. It used to be that manufacturers were adding this numeric keypad to just about every keyboard, and then all of a sudden now with newer computers and especially laptops that are becoming more compact in size, well, that 10 keypad is being sacrificed in the process. So if you have one, or one is available to you in some way, then some people find this an easier way to find those math operators. And you'll know if you have it because, well, here's a 0 down in the lower left of that keypad, but then you have the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now above the 8, you have the division /. Above the 9, you have the asterisk for multiply. To the right of the asterisk, you have the minus sign, and then below the minus sign, you have a really large target here of the plus sign. The plus sign is also on the right-hand side of that keypad, so it's to the right of the 9 and the 6 keys. Coming back to our last two rules for formulas, let's look at, first of all, use cell references when possible. Now this basically means use the cell name, say A1, as opposed to the literal contents of that cell, and again, let's say maybe it's 5, in your formula, so that your formulas will always read something like equals A1 plus B1 rather than equals 5 plus 3. There is a reason for that, and it's really an attempt to keep your spreadsheet formulas as accurate and as updated as possible. Anytime you use literal values, then you have to go back in and find every formula that uses that literal value when you need to make an update. And it's very easy to miss one of those updates, and then you have an inaccurate spreadsheet. So always use cell references when possible. The last step here, this no spaces, is really more of just a good practice than a hard and fast rule. Google Sheets will allow you to add spaces in, but if you are ever going to, say, create a spreadsheet in Sheets and then for whatever reason transfer that information over to Excel, Excel will not understand the formulas necessarily because spaces were added. And since spaces aren't needed, it's really just a good idea not to add them in because you don't know if and when those spaces might cause an issue. So again, formulas begin with an equal sign. We use math operators. You use cell references as much as possible, no spaces. And now that we know our rules, let's look at some examples of how we might use them. Now let's look at these examples, and you can see that in B1 I've added a 21 and in D1 I've added 7. On the right I have a reminder of our basic rules as we write our formulas, so please refer to those if you would like to. And let's start in B3 and add those two cells. So we'll start with an equal sign. And the one thing that we definitely can do is go to B1, and we could simply click on B1, and then I'll add in the plus sign, and then I'll come over to D1 and click on it. Now you can't really always use this click method, but as long as your formula and the cells you're referring to are fairly close together, it only makes sense to just click. It saves you some typing. Now also notice that this is color coded, so I have kind of this orangey color for B1, and the border around B1 is the same color. Then I look at D1 in my formula, and on my laptop it looks kind of a purpley color, and it's basically that same color as a border around D1. And then to simply set that formula into my spreadsheet, I press enter. And now I have the answer in B3, 28, but if I click on that cell and look at the formula bar, I can now see how I got that answer, equals B1 plus D1. Well, let me also come over here to D3 and show you that you could also type in those cell references. So I could type equals, and then I know the cell that I want to add first is B1, so I could just simply type B1, and then I can add in the plus sign. And then again, the next cell that I want to add is D1, so I can type a D1 and press enter, and it gives me the same answer. When I click on that cell and look at the formula bar, well, it's exactly the same look to it, equals B1 plus D1. So whether you click or whether you type everything in, it all works the same. Now when we subtract, sometimes people get confused with this, so let me show you two possibilities. First of all, I'm going to say equals, and then I'm just going to use my click method here. So B1, add in the minus sign, minus D1, press enter, and I get an answer of 14. And I can look in the formula bar and see that I subtracted D1 from B1. But sometimes subtraction and what you're supposed to do is confusing. So you may find that you accidentally do this, equals D1 minus B1. And we can press enter. And you can see that we get a negative 14. So if you're anticipating a positive 14, first of all, this tells you that Sheets is quite happy to give you the answer that you requested, but it might not be the answer that you actually want. So you would go in and look at that formula. Now it's not going to tell you how to fix it, but you could look at it and think about what you need to do if you want that to be positive, and then you could say, oh, well, I just need to reverse those numbers. So it's easy enough to fix, but always think about what is my answer going to be. You know, this is what I'm anticipating, and if it doesn't match, well, then you may need to rethink your formula a little bit. Well, let's come down to B7 and multiply, and I'll just type equals, and again, I'm going to click on B1, put in the asterisk for multiply, and then D1, press enter, and I get 147. Well, that's probably about right. And again, as I look at the formula bar, I now have equals B1 times D1. Well, let's also divide. So let's come down to B9 for division, and there are two ways that we could do this one as well. So let's say equals 21, or B1, divided by, and again it's the forward slash, D1, or 7. And when we press enter, we get 3. But we could also use those numbers to write a fraction, and just remember, fractions mean divide. So equals D1, or 7, divided by 21, B1, and again, it would look like 7/21. And when we press enter, well, even before I press enter, notice that it's giving me the projected answer. So when I press enter, it says, yes, that is 1/3, or it's 0.3333, well, a lot of threes. So you can create fractions or decimal equivalents of those fractions as well, just depending on how you divide. And so now we have done addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division using those math operators and basic math to get a lot of the answers that we need in our spreadsheet. To learn even more, visit our mymcpl.org/online learning page, where you will find some really great online resources, which include Universal Class, LinkedIn Learning, and Learning Express Library. Tune in each week as we introduce new videos on a variety of tech topics. You can find us at 1 o'clock on Wednesday and Friday and 2 o'clock on Tuesday. Be sure to find us on Facebook at MCPL 360, or if you prefer, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel at MCPLMO, where you can find our MCPL Consumer Technology Resources playlist.